All right. At this time, I am calling to order the meeting for the Inland Valley Development Agency for this October 10th of 2018. And Madam Clerk, would you please do roll?
City of Colton. From the City of Loma Linda.
Ovi Popescu.
The County of San Bernardino.
There's two of us. Which one?
Count. 5th District.
Josie Gonzalez.
3rd District.
James Ramos.
And from the City of San Bernardino. Virginia Marquez.
And Fred Charette.
Thank you.
All right. And just for the record, as additional members, board members come, we will make sure that they get recorded into the record. With this, we have closed session. All right. We will then recess to closed session. All right, we are back from closed session, and I will dare to say that I neglected to ask if there was any public comment for the closed session calendar items. Seeing none, thank you so much. At this time, I will ask legal counsel, is there any reportable action out of closed session?
There is not, Madam Chair. However, I would like to note for the record that Supervisor Ramos and Supervisor Gonzalez reclused himself from the discussion of item B on our closed session.
Thank you so very much. And Madam Clerk, would you please do the additional roll calls as we have new members that have come on board?
Yes. Please state your name for the record. For the City of Colton.
Isaac Suchel.
The City of San Bernardino.
Kerry Davis.
And City
Fred
of Loma
Charette.
Linda.
That's me, Fred Charette.
No.
City of
Oh,
Loma
sorry.
Linda. City of Loma Linda. Dusty Rigsby.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so very much. If everyone would please stand, let's say the Pledge of Allegiance and get this meeting underway. You ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so very much. Please be seated. At this time, Mr. Burrows, are there any items to be added or deleted from the agenda?
No items.
Any conflict of interest disclosures from board members?
I had a question, Madam Chair. Since City of Colton has a couple projects with Hillwood, who do I address this?
Legal counsel.
Legal counsel, does that indicate a conflict, or I'm just trying to get clarification?
That you have contracts with Hillwood.
Right. We have a project in my area, so.
I do not believe it conflicts you from a project in another area of this nature, no.
Okay, just wanted clarification. Thank you.
All right. Any informational items at this time, Mr. Burrows?
Yes, we do have a few, and I'll address a couple of mine here briefly. You'll recall at our last meeting, I did update the board on Mountain View interchange, and this has been actually exciting process in cooperating with the City of Loma Linda, working with their staff and city manager. We have been advised that the $1 million of funds that we've been able to obtain through Caltrans will result in the widening of on and off ramps at Mountain View, and that work will be placed by Loma Linda out to bid, hopefully to start construction here just after the fall, and we're talking about a 6-month or so construction period. So it's fully funded, and we hope for good results, and Mr. Typet will be informing us here shortly of that. So good news to come there. Second piece is the specific plan, our third and fifth, what they're calling the Alliance Gateway Specific Plan in the corridor north of the airport. At our last update, you recall there was a concept that was proffered by our stakeholders with the potential to eliminate a portion of 5th Street from Sterling to Victoria. I do want to report out that the traffic analysis that we did engage in with the parties does not support that without significant mitigation. And so that is going to be moved as a study alternative that was done, but the preferred alternative going forward will be to retain Fifth Street. The EIR for that project is being drafted now, and we hope here just after first of the year to have it presented in draft final form for you in the respective jurisdictions. So it is moving forward, but I did want to report out that that alignment does not look to be feasible, and we've advised the stakeholders of the same. Last but not least, I'd like Mr. Gibbs to tell you about the good news that we experienced here at the beginning of October on the airport with a little company called FedEx.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I'm pleased to tell you that beginning October 1st, FedEx took possession of hangar 795. This is the midfield hangar located adjacent to the control tower. It was a very extensive project that we worked very closely with our partners at Hillwood to turnkey this project in 4 months. And of course, they actually delivered the product a day early, and FedEx began operating 757 aircraft through the facility, which they will continue to do year-round with daily flights. Also pleased to tell you that they hired 72 people to operate at the facility. Those are direct jobs. They're actual FedEx employees, and they're pleased to be here. It's working out very well for them, and of course, we're thrilled to have them. Thank you.
And then,
How many flights a day?
It's one flight a day right now. They may add additional flights. There's actually capabilities for 2, so there's actually 2 gates there. They're actively leasing one. They haven't released their November or December schedules. It's generally the busy time. They have alluded that there may be additional flights. But what we do know for sure is that they're flying Monday through Friday every day.
and the last piece of that is the Tippecanoe Road to access the airport is under construction. So that contract you awarded at your last meeting is underway right now. So drive down Tippecanoe, it's going to look a little different. And that is on track for completion November 1st. So thank you for your support on that. Well, it's a new road yet. No potholes yet because no pavement's down, but we're getting close. So that concludes our reports.
All right, the only thing I will ask in regards to Tippecanoe and or any other street improvements that we're involved in is that you let us know if there are any requests for any service cuts from any of the utility companies or city, that we then make sure that the quality and the integrity of the street improvements that we make are maintained.
Absolutely. We don't like cutting into brand new roads. We understand.
All right, any questions, board members? Hearing none, then at this time I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items 3 through 5.
Move approval.
I have a
Second.
motion
Second.
and a second. Any comments? Any opposition? Hearing none, it is so ordered. Moving on to item number 6, which is to consider and discuss the local preference procurement process for construction services and provide direction to staff as appropriate for inclusion in future Inland Valley Development Agency policy and procedure updates. Mr. Burrows, please.
Yes, as you'll recall at our last meeting, there was direction given to staff to place an item of this sort on your next agenda. So we have this here for you. Legal counsel and our staff have worked on analyzing the background on this. And so a few things here in front of you. The item under which we discussed this was actually a construction contract. So in deference to your review, we have not included in the policies and procedures update the construction element of that at this time. And so the next item will be absent that, pending this discussion and any further guidance we receive from you. As to local preference for construction projects, we do have a couple of distinctions to make. So there's local preference when it comes to the procurement of goods and services, equipment and such. And thankfully, in Brandy and her team's research of local agencies, we all have those in one form or fashion, including the IVDA. and that includes our respective city members and county members. That is actually different than construction services. So we've attached samples of member agency members and what they've done in local preference arenas, and certainly those are present. When it comes to construction contracts, though, that is actually governed through the Public Contracts Code, and also governed by the funds, the funding source for the respective project. Our research there indicates that there are not local preference procedures in the local region with IVDA or our member agencies related to construction. And the primary reason for that is we're required by law to award to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. And that is the case in adhering to that. In addition, if certain grant funds, bond proceeds are included, many times they do not allow for local preference either. However, I am proud to report that in our purchasing policies and procedures, there is a local preference provision there. It's reflected in the item that you'll see in the next update, and we do utilize that quite readily. I would ask legal counsel to provide any other observations he had through the process as well.
Mike, I think that's a very good summary of it. As he's mentioned, with inside the purchasing of goods and services like that, we can do a local preference. All of your member agencies do in fact have one in one form or matter or another. The problem with extending it to construction contracts is we're bound by the Public Contract Code, and there is no exception in there that allows you to give a local preference on it. So basically, hands are tied when it comes to that type of project.
I will note that the one interesting provision that we found was in the city of Loma Linda. They do have reference in their procurement processes under construction that in the event there's a tie on a construction bid, then local preference could be applied to essentially break the tie. And so if that is of interest to this body, we can certainly include that. It's a pretty rare instance that you have an exact same bid, but it could happen. So that's generally what we found, and appreciate any feedback from the board.
All right, board members, comments?
I have a quick question.
Please, first Councilwoman Marquez and then
Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember
I
Popescu.
want to go back to the construction contracts that Loma Linda has in writing. Is this the only city that uses this?
Yes, in our research, that is the only entity in our JPA area that has that particular provision, and it's an easy insert for our procedures
Right.
if that is the will of the board.
Thank you for the research on this. It was kind of a crash course on construction contracts. Very informative.
Yeah, well,
Helps
I'll
cities.
thank our clerk of the board team. They did great work. So.
All right, Councilmember Popescu.
When it comes to professional services, so if it's something like maintenance or cleaning and things like that, could we identify local preferences for that?
Yeah, we do, and actually, in Mr. Garay's procurement procedures right now, our local preference provision there does come into effect under services.
And
It
I think
does
that's
now.
probably where there was a little confusion, that there is some efforts to try to ensure that our member entities have businesses within them that are given some preference. But when it comes to construction, it's going to boil down to the bidding process and what we're governed by.
Yeah,
Okay.
we want to do it everywhere we can. That's
Thank
the
you.
intent.
Do we have a approved bidders list?
We do not have an approved bidders list,
All right,
and
well, we
that
can-
again becomes a subset of the legal activities that we can
Right.
do given the project itself.
Well,
Some
perhaps we can-
projects don't allow for that.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. Perhaps we can discuss that. Mayor, Supervisor.
Yeah, just on some of the grant funding that comes our way from the federal or state areas, would that preclude a local preference in some of that funding that's there? And if so, then do we have it worded so much that we do our best to get to the local preference, but if we reach those obstacles, then we go to the 3 bids or the policy that controls the bids that come our way?
That is an excellent point, Supervisor. So yes, particularly in the U.S. Department of Commerce realm, where we've been operating for many, many years, they do not allow local preference. However, what we do, as a matter of course, do in what is called the bid marketing, when you're actually putting the project out to bid, is Mr. Harris and the team do their darndest to make sure every local vendor that we're aware of gets notice of that, it's on the website, and that we do our best to make sure local companies know about the project itself. That is allowable, and certainly we can reinforce that language in the updated procedures if you like.
And it is, and the reason I bring it up is because if we do move forward with the local preference, but yet we come back and see some bids that are being awarded that didn't get to that point, the knowledge of knowing where that origination of those funds come from with any stipulations that might not allow for this type of policy to be part of that whole funding stream.
And in future items, we'll be happy to include that in the description and discussion. That is very constructive, sure.
Thank you.
All right, other comments? All right, then I'll go back to, in regards to my question on the approved bidders list. What do we need to do? Is that part of the direction that we need to include, or?
Well, I'm going to
what's-
defer to legal counsel because that gets into some pretty narrow bodies of the contracts code where you can and can't utilize approved bidders list. So, Mike, if you would.
Yes, for an approved bidders list, when we're doing that, we are talking about, absolute competitive bid construction type contracts. What you can do, and there's an express procedure you can follow to pre-qualify bidders, and you do it by noticing and let everybody submit qualifications or so, and you rank them based upon identifiable criteria. Inside that ranking, you can, give points to, say, a local agency or things like that to qualify to the bid. However, once they actually bid, you will back to the lowest bid dollar amount, and we can't set up a global pre-qualification, if you will. We would have to do it on a project-by-project basis. So kind of discretion needs to be done on those because now we have a two-phase process, and so kind of lengthens out the approval process.
Where I've seen it most successfully implemented is, in County of San Bernardino. So when on-call contracts are put out, that's where approved bidders often are used, and it works very well in those circumstances, and
Right.
that is permissible.
Right. It also works very well under emergency
Absolutely.
circumstances,
Yeah.
which, really helps us in a moment of crisis, that we have identified certain services or suppliers or what have you that are go-to.
And that, in the current construction policies, the emergency section is there. You may recall a few years ago, Ms. Pritchett had to deal with the flood impacts of the 3rd Street Channel.
Yep.
And under that special authority in Public Contracts Code, we are allowed to do that there, definitely.
True, but we would need that approved bidders list in order to have it.
Actually, the code even allows you to do a compressed procurement under emergency to where you can designate local firms as you go out as well. So we can
Okay.
include the preferred bidders in both instances,
All right.
if that's your pleasure.
All right, very well. Any additional comments, board members? At this time, I would, is this a receive and file? It says consider and discuss.
It's provide direction.
Provide direction.
Next meeting.
All right, so we've discussed the approved bidders list. We've discussed Supervisor Ramos's suggestion, and absolutely, I think that's a good idea, good points. Any other? Hearing none, then that's your direction.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 7, which is, and got to give me a moment because I'm still hassling with this newfangled computer here. It is to review and approve updated procedures and supporting documents for the Inland Valley Development Agency consistent with previously approved agency policies. Ms. Pritchett, if you'd be so kind as to present this item.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Currently, the IVDA has 15 operating policies that guide the day-to-day activities of the agency. Throughout the year, these documents are they're referred to, revised, and reviewed from staff and presented to the board annually for any required updates that we might have. This year, the staff report states that we had 5 policies to be revised for 2018. That was in error. We did remove the construction policies, and we also removed the accounting policies. So this year, we do have 3 policies that have had revisions made for board approval. Those include the personnel procedures, the purchasing procedures, and the IT policies and procedures. I'm happy to answer any questions about each of these, but all of them were really revised to reflect any changes that came down from state and federal regulation, as well as internal policies that better align with our day-to-day activities. Mr. Gray, Brandy Goodman, and I can answer any questions if there are any from the board.
Board members, any questions?
Through the chair.
Yes, Mayor?
On page 117, the red line portion, about the middle, it says, time off requests are to be requested through the employee Bamboo HR account.
Correct. Recently, we implemented a lot of time and attendance systems to automate our wage reporting. Bamboo is a system that we use for human resources to review and approve time off requests for staff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions, board members?
Yeah, I have one.
Mayor
Is there any changes that would have caused a significant financial impact or from our budget, or what would change?
No, none at this time.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any additional questions? Hearing none, at this time, I will consider a motion for item number 7.
Move item number 7.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Mayor De La Rosa, a second from Councilmember Charette. Any additional comments? Any opposition? Hearing none, item number 7 is approved. Moving on to item number 8, which is to consider and discuss the updated action plan for the Inland Valley Development Agency through December 31st of 2018, which is around the corner. Yikes. All right, Mr. Burrows.
So we find ourselves here in October. We are, believe it or not, the finance team is working on your annual audit behind the scenes here. So, well, not for you, Bill, but that is on track, and we are expecting a draft audit here this next month, and that will be on track to present to you in December. In addition, the federal fiscal year is upon us, as you have maybe heard once or twice, and Ms. Beltran is working on a few new grant initiatives and programs with our stakeholders again, so we should have that report to you at next meeting. Hopefully some good news with some new federal dollars that at least have been approved so far. So that concludes our report.
All right. Any questions? Any comments? Hearing none, at this point, I will ask if there is anyone from the public wishing to come forward to speak on an item that is on or off the agenda but relevant to this board. All right, seeing no one, close the public comment. Board members, any comments? Hearing none. Councilmember Sucho.
I just wanted to make a comment to staff. A while back when I came onto this board, I requested a digital, so if I can go back to the digital copy instead of having the...
Brandy would be elated, so absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm old school. I'd rather have hard copy.
All right.
Duly noted. Anyone else that wants electronic, just tell us and we'll do it.
Yeah, Box works. I'm working on this thing. I have a new Dell, and I miss my iPad. I'm having withdrawals. So with that, this meeting is adjourned to our next regular meeting of Wednesday, November 14th of 2018. Be blessed, be well, and be safe.
Good luck, Supervisor. It'll never happen. Once you've done it.